When I ask my toddler, "Where's the chimp?" she correctly grabs this one. When I say, "Where's the monkey?" she grabs this one. As an anthropologist mom, I'm so proud my 1-year-old can distinguish between monkeys and chimps. And if you can't, don't worry. It's actually easy. Our monkey friend has a tail. Our chimp friend does not. And you know who else lacks tails? Us, humans. Meanwhile, most mammals have them. Giraffe, horse, lemur. Reptiles like alligators and turtles have them. Fish and birds do. Dinosaurs had them. So what's the deal? Why do we humans and chimps lack this common appendage? I'm Dr. Bridget Alex, an anthropologist who studies human evolution. Today, let's talk tails. When did we lose them? Why and how? You used to have a tail, actually in 2 ways. You had one just a few weeks into development when you were an embryo. But this embryonic tail usually regresses and disappears by the 8th week of development. So most people are born without tails. In addition to the embryonic tail lost over the course of development, you also had an ancestral tail lost over the course of evolution. If you traced your ancestry back far enough, you'd eventually find an ancestor who had a tail. How far back? To answer this, anthropologists check who among our closest relatives, other primates, has a tail. Most primates do, and they look pretty fun. Good for balancing. Monkeys that live in the Americas even have prehensile tails, which means they can grasp with their tails and hang from them. TD monkeys twist tails with their mates, like holding hands. It's the cutest fact in primatology. But we are a type of primate called apes or hominoids. Today, the hominoids include chimps, gorillas, orangutans, gibbons, and humans. All the apes lack tails. So the thinking is, if you trace back to the shared ancestor of all apes, this creature would be tailless. That creature probably lived about 25 million years ago. And that's the estimate for the evolutionary split between apes and monkeys of Africa and Eurasia, based on how different their DNA is today. And we do still carry a vestige of this long-gone tail, your tailbone. It's your final few vertebrae bones. They taper instead of leading to more bones for a proper tail. And actually, researchers have found fossils from apes that lived about 15 to 18 million years ago, examined their rumps, and these ancient apes also have tailbones that taper. So there's decent consensus about when we lost our ancestral tails, probably by 25 million years ago when apes and monkeys split. On to the question of why. We don't have a clear hypothesis for why nixing the tail made ancestral apes more likely to survive or reproduce in the conditions they faced 25 million years ago. But anthropologists suspect tail loss was part of a suite of anatomical changes that happened during ape evolution. For instance, compared to monkeys, apes have shorter lower backs, a rib cage that's broader across, the upper part of the pelvis is elongated, their shoulder blades are on the back instead of the side. Probably some or all of these features helped apes spend more time upright. And apes do spend a decent amount of time upright, not usually walking on 2 legs like we humans almost always do, but getting upright to climb, to reach for things, to swing. And to accommodate all this vertical positioning, they have what's known as an orthograde body plan, skeletal features that help them be upright. The hypothesis is tail loss relates to the orthograde body plan. Support for this idea comes from observing species across the animal kingdom, looking at their various tail lengths, how they use their tails, how they position their bodies. So probably something to do with being upright. That's as much as I can say about why our ape ancestors lost their tails. But if you Google, "why did humans lose their tails?" the AI overview gives a decisive answer. So has AI already replaced me as an expert in human evolution and science communicator? The answer is definitely incomplete and probably wrong. It relies primarily on conclusions from a 2024 paper in Nature that was titled "On the Genetic Basis of Tail Loss Evolution in Humans and Apes." Sounds promising. It is an impressive study with numerous experiments that took years to complete. There's totally cool science in this paper, but it doesn't solve tail loss. Like all science, this paper, led by geneticists at New York University, was built on previous research. Earlier studies had identified genes related to tail development in other species, such as mice and cats. The NYU team investigated some of these genes, comparing the versions in monkeys with tails to the versions in tailless apes. They discovered in a gene called TBXT, apes have an extra snippet of DNA that monkeys don't. This snippet doesn't code for anything, but the scientists hypothesized that it can snag up with another non-coding snippet, and when that happens, a coding portion of the TBXT gene gets missed when the gene is being read to make proteins. And according to the study authors, that leads to tail loss in apes. To further test the idea, they used CRISPR-Cas9, that gene editing tool, to tinker with the DNA of human stem cells and mice. For instance, in one of their mouse experiments, the researchers removed that portion of coding DNA they think gets skipped in apes if those non-coding stretches stick together. In this experiment, mice with only the altered gene didn't make it. That was lethal. But they also made mice with one altered gene and one normal mouse gene. Of them, 42 had normal tails, 4 had no tail, 9 had short tails, 8 had kink tails. So clearly, missing this chunk of DNA can influence tail development. But just as clearly, this can't be the full story of ape tail loss, as your Google AI companion would have you believe. In the article, the authors throw in some hedging and appropriately cautious phrasing, like here, where they write, "The insertion may have marked a key genetic event that contributed to tail loss." And when the paper appeared in 2024, some geneticists posted critiques on social media. You really have to be into Evo-Devo genetics to appreciate all the issues raised, but I'll mention the 2 most obvious reasons why this one paper doesn't solve tail loss. First, because of your embryonic tail, the tail most people form and lose during development. Human genomes must have working instructions for making tails. Then some genetic code tells our embryos to retract that tail. And then second, we shouldn't assume one mutation, in this case an extra insert of DNA, kicked off tail loss, especially if tail loss was part of a suite of body-wide changes that allowed apes to spend more time upright. Even specifically for tails, there could have been many genes involved. Ancestral primates with different versions of these genes may have had slightly different tail lengths. Over time, those with shorter tails fared slightly better and were more likely to pass on a bunch of genes that each made a tiny impact, but together led to shorter tails, and then no tail. I'm not saying that's definitely what happened, but most big changes in evolution involve many genes. And really, how we lost our tails doesn't matter. The stakes are not high if we get the tail of tail loss wrong, but it's a good example of why expertise matters. The quick internet search gave a misleading and possibly flat wrong answer, but someone who has spent years studying development might see that and say, but what about our embryonic tail? Or someone who has spent years studying ape evolution might say, but what about all the other physical changes that seem to accompany tail loss? Even as an expert on human evolution, it took me a full day to make sense of this paper. I had to ask colleagues who do similar work for some clarification questions. And when a scientific question arises that actually is high stakes, questions of human health, climate change, AI accountability, for example, I rely on people who have devoted their lives to studying those matters, the experts.
So, we didn't solve the question of tail loss today. Sorry, no one has. But at least now you can join an elite group that includes anthropologists and my toddler, who look to tails to tell the difference between monkeys and apes.
Maybe we can make it so when people Google, "How did humans lose their tail?" this video shows up instead. Help me out by liking the video, sharing it, and subscribing to my channel at Origins Bridget Alex.